Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to the panel on Myth Tales of Legend. My name is Ross Watson. I am the lead designer and line manager of Myth Tales of Legend, the role-playing game. And with me is Michael Merrell. Michael, tell everybody who you are.
My name is Michael. I am one of the additional writers with Myth Tales of Legend, working on particularly Game Master Guide in this case.
That's right. Almost everything we're talking about tonight, I would hazard to say just like 99% of it is stuff that Michael worked on. So that's one of the reasons why he's with us tonight. And let's unveil, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to unveil the brand new, the awesome looking logo for Myth Tales of Legend. Poof, there it is in all of its glory. Isn't that gorgeous? All right, so tonight we are talking about some really cool new stuff in the Game Master's Guide. We've got some particular new mechanics that we just haven't really discussed before. So this is kind of a sneak peek, if you will. And we're going over magic items, or relics, as they're called. We're going over strange places, and we're going over sojourns. Michael, why don't we start with some of the magic items? Now, you can tell us, first of all, pick one out that you really like, tell us about it, and explain what makes it different from a standard magic item you might find in another role-playing game.
Okay, yeah, I wanted to bring up one of the ones I was pleased about was something I called the Seeker's Spectacles, kind of tapping into some of the clockwork stuff about Myth. One of the notions that we put into the game with magic items is that they kind of get stronger with the character, using the ideas of rank. So as they kind of go up, the bonuses that you get are based off of that. But in the case of the spectacles, depending on sort of what class you are and what that sort of symbol is, the spectacles will do different things for you. So, those that are tied to spellcasters might be able to see magic, auras of magic around them. Those that are of a nature bent can track better, that sort of thing.
You're talking about the fate symbol that is attached to particular archetypes. You can also, actually, there's a talent that lets you pick up a fate symbol of your choice if you really, really want to be a guy if you really want to be like a skald who has both faith and arcane, you can pick up arcane with a talent.
Right.
What you're saying is these spectacles, they give you an additional bonus based on that, whatever symbol you have.
Yeah, like for example, the spectacles, they will generally give you a bonus to your perceptions, any noticing checks and that sort of thing. But yeah, depending on your fate symbol, you get one additional thing, and so it's kind of different depending on your class. Primarily, do focus on what your class is good at.
And what's cool about that? What's cool about that is not only do they get better the more higher in rank I go, but if I happen to get another fate symbol along the way, then I get more benefits out of it because I get both of them. Yeah. All right, awesome. What's another one of your magic items that is really cool and different?
Kind of harping on the clockwork stuff, but there was one for like if you're an inventor or an engineer sort of thing called the Enhancer Tools. It's sort of a modular sonic screwdriver sort of universal tool that can kind of adjust and then get you certain bonuses. And then if you have the correct fate symbol, then you unlock even more abilities. And then as you get higher levels, you unlock even more stuff. So
this is tailor-made for the trickster archetype. Absolutely, yes. Tailor-made. And I love the fact that it is basically a universal tool. It's like a Swiss Army knife that is also a magic item. And it's of course it's from Blackwall, which is where all the really cool TikTok stuff is made. But what can you explain one of the things I can do with the Enhancer tools?
The Enhancer tools. Basically, when you pick one up, they generally tend to be configured for a specific skill. So maybe investigation or tinkering or even healing, and then they'll give you extra dice that you're rolling for that. But if you possess, if you're a trickster, then you can unlock other things. You can use, like in Myth, we've got the idea of interaction attacks. You can use, social skills to intimidate or confuse your opponent. A trickster could use their invention skill, or tinkering skill, to do the same thing. And whatever narrative that is, I cobble together this little thing that screeches and distracts the opponent or something like that. Very open ended.
I make a tiny TikTok voodoo doll of my opponent and then poke it dramatically, and it goes ah!
Pop its head off,
and that frightens the enemy. And the GM's like, yeah, that works.
Exactly, exactly.
I love it.
So yeah, anybody could pick. Any class could pick it up and get the basic benefit. But a trickster, it really comes alive in a trickster's hand, and they can invent all sorts of little rapid fire gadgets in the midst of combat.
So we're not going to go through every single one of the magic items in the book. There are quite a few, but we're not going to go through all of them. There's over 24, just at a first glance, and we picked out a couple of the ones that we wanted to focus on. But let's just say that there's quite a few good ones, and I want to thank Michael for coming up with each and every one of them, because he did.
It's a lot of fun.
But that's really just one of the things we want to talk about tonight. And I think, honestly, magic items are cool as hell. Don't get me wrong. I love them. But I feel like there's a lot more to talk about, because people have seen magic items before. And even though ours are neat and different and are based on your rank and your fate symbol, they're still magic items. But there are things that we've done, specifically the things that you've written about the strange places and about Sojourns, that are probably, I think, a little more interesting to go over. So why don't we start talking about, I'm going to skip all the way down to the strange places. So
Sure.
Tell us what is the rules for strange places? What are they, and how do they work?
Okay. So the idea is, the world of Myth has got a lot of very interesting, magical, terrifying regions, and travel or adventuring in these areas should feel unique, special, and have its own sort of flavor to it. So what we use in this section about strange places is, we have a sort of a chart of things that could happen in these areas. Anything from strange temperature changes to whispering voices, or creatures crawling by, or what have you. And if you are running a game in this area, this gives you some ideas, things that could occur as your heroes are traveling through these lands. The one that we have are the Fields of Light, and let me bring it up so make sure I'm saying this right. So the desert area there, and things that could occur, strange drumming sounds, by cults to the World Eater, looking to call it to them, or dust devils, or
Strangely rhythmic drums that
yeah.
it's weird. No, I think this is what strange places really do, is they give the game master a lot of options to bring that area to life, to really just say, okay, so you are in the Wasteland of the Risen, and what does that mean? What you can read about it, like we have a description of the Wasteland of the Risen in the setting material, but as the game master's chapter, this actually says to you, okay, here are things you can actually talk about or cause to occur or affect the player characters when they're here. So it really gives them some tools to just make that region interesting and special. And that's why I like what you've done here. You've picked out everything from the Wasteland of the Risen to the Fields of Light, even some more generic stuff like Naga Tainted Waters, which is one of my favorites, or the Symbio Woods, which is a very specific piece of land. So sometimes it'll be something that a game master can pick when they're in that particular place, or sometimes it'll be a thing that the game master can reference when they're in a place like it, or similar to it, or kind of
Absolutely.
related to that kind of thing. Because non-tainted waters can happen like literally anywhere on the
Sure.
coast if you really wanted to.
Or like the wasteland of the Risen. If you want to have a region that kind of has that spooky, haunted, monstrous feel, yeah, go ahead, pull on this. Draw on that for your inspiration for your narrative.
Now, you're a GM. You've ran a number of games yourself.
Maybe one or
two. Yeah, just one or two. How can you explain to me like how would you use something like this in one of your games?
I think what I would be doing with this is if I'm planning a session, I might take the chart, I might roll randomly, because you can do that, or you can pick and choose, your choice. To see like, okay, well, what could I do here? And for like, they're going to wander through the wasteland, and I roll, and I get a region that's covered in shattered dry bones and dried desiccated flesh. Like, oh, okay, cool. What can that'll be like where they go through and kind of gives me this idea how to invoke that feeling of fear and so forth. I might roll again and talking about crows circling the remnants of an old battlefield. I'm like, oh, that'd be great. They walk through this and then they see this thing, and included in these starts are also mechanical effects. They need to make some kind of an attribute chest to resist the sudden fear or the cold, and it just really will help a GM kind of bring in the evocative nature of these alien places. And so when heroes leave that, players come back, it's like, oh man, you remember the wasteland? That was creepy as heck.
Yeah, I like it. It adds flavor.
So I would use that, and it adds flavor. Included in each of these sections is also some suggestion as to when you might want to bring one of these out. When you would invoke this, like for the wasteland. If a hero were to get separated from the group, hold on, see what happens. Make something crazy happen. Because that's a classic horror trope. Someone gets separated, and all of a sudden there's weird things happening. We're worried about them. We gotta go find them. So yeah, creates those little side narratives as they're traveling through the region.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going. Was the idea that you can use this to generate encounters if you want. You can use this to just sort of, I need something to happen, and I don't know what that is.
Sure.
But you can also, and I like the point you brought up is also really important. At the end of each one of these entries, he's got basically guidance on when to do this, when to have something happen, and they are obviously the game master can do this whenever he wants, but these are guidance aimed at ways to do it that fall in line with what the region is about.
Exactly.
And as a game master, that's the part I like the most, is that it's like, yeah, okay, cool. So they're in the wasteland, great. Well, I mean, we're going to use this example because it's great. But so they're in the wasteland of the Risen, and maybe they're talking. The players are talking amongst themselves, role play. That's all great. And maybe there's that pause, and you as a game master like, okay, maybe I want to fill this silence with something. Something should happen. So then you're like, yeah, hey, you notice that there's a heck of a lot of cultures over this region.
Mm-hmm.
And then somebody says, oh, I'm going to go wander off and check that out by myself, and you're like, even more I can add to this. Like you can bait the hook, you can reel them in, you can do all kinds of stuff with them, and that's
compound it.
That's what I get a kick out of it. So the strange places are a fun thing. We may come back to this because there's more going on with this, but this is I think we've given a good idea of what they are and how they work.
Yeah.
So why don't we move on to the third part? And this is definitely the biggest, the most crunchiest, I would even say, of the things that we're adding in the Game Master's Guide. Sojourns. So Michael, what is a sojourn and how does it work?
Okay, so the concept of a sojourn is given the vastness of the world, there are periods where the party of heroes will need to travel from point A to point B, and it's not just like, oh, we'll be there in a couple of days. It's like weeks, maybe even a couple of months to cross half the continent to get to their destination. And in kind of Lord of the Rings style, there's always that montage as they kind of work their way through that. And so the idea of the Sojourn is, it kind of pulls you away from the idea of either, you don't just gloss over it, because, any trip across that length of space and time should be memorable. But you also don't want to say, okay, so we got about 90 days of travel. Let's roll, checks every single day. So it kind of finds that little balance between, the montage and then also having the chance to zero in on a memorable moment of the journey, the trek across the landscape. So the mechanics are helped to kind of help streamline that. So you don't need, you don't worry about, well, how many days of rations do we need to buy? How much does that cost? Kind of gloss over that. It's abstracted in a way. But then so you can kind of almost envision, the line of Indiana Jones's plane going across the map, and then it pauses and you zoom in on the action as something interesting, and then it pulls back out, it kind of comes in, back in, and so forth. So.
Yeah, I mean, but if I remember right, actually, one of the things you do with the Sojourn, though, is you break down who's responsible for feeding everybody.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And
yeah. So everybody, so
you have a guide. Yeah. Talk about
they all have
what
responsibilities, as it were. Yes. So like, there's the guide. That's the person that's sort of in charge and decides all the logistics and the route and so forth. This is sort of the person that's kind of leading the expedition, as it were. You've got the scouts, kind of the pathfinder, the one who's reconning up ahead to make sure the path is clear, finding ways around obstacles, that sort of thing. You've got hunters; they're the foragers. They're going out there, finding food, finding water. And then you've got watchers. They're the ones keep an eye on things, make sure monsters aren't sneaking up on you, the bad guys aren't catching up to you. And so as when you get to that point where Gene wants to zero in on an event, a memorable event that happens during the Sojourn, those that have taken up one of these roles are sort of at the head of the action. They're like, okay, we're lost. You're the scout. You better find our path. Or supplies are low. You're the hunter. You got to find us something.
So you were talking earlier about rolling every day for a 90-day trek. And right. Of course, I remember way back in the day, we used to do it by hex. How many hexes are you crossing on the map?
Yes.
But for real though, I actually ran a game just like a week ago where the player characters. Well, okay, I'm sorry, it's been like 3 weeks ago. Anyway, 3 weeks ago, I ran a game where the player characters did travel over like 3 days worth of distance. And it didn't hit me until just now that I actually missed an opportunity there, because that would have been a cool moment to do something just like this and say, okay, yeah, you travel for 3 days and, it's not particularly tough. You're not traveling through like monster-infested territory.
Sure.
But something cool could happen that would allow me as a GM the opportunity to show them something about the land they're traveling through and allow the player characters a chance to tell a little bit about their story by how they react to the thing.
Exactly. Yep.
And that's really what Sojourns are, is just a game master tool that says, okay, you can just gloss over this, you can just move them on, but here's an opportunity to tell more of a story about the story of the place, the story of the characters, the story of the quest. And I know you use Lord of the Rings as your reference, but in my head, that's really not the books; it's the movies.
Yeah, there was
right?
really
Because you get those, the vista, the big, sweeping camera across New Zealand, dun dun da da da. That's the Lord of the Rings part. That as a game master, I would try to, this is how I'd use a Sojourn. Is I'd be like, okay, yeah, so imagine, a grand sweeping, flyover of a mountain range, and there's a river, and there's maybe a big boulder in the middle of the river. So this is the part. I mean, this is kind of when I came to you and said, Michael, write me something for Sojourns. This is the part that I was really excited to see what you did with it. And I think we've got a question. It's from Greg. Hi, Greg. Do Sojourn roles vary by environment? Michael, do you want to tackle that one?
Not specifically. The events that could occur are intended to be very general, so you can utilize them in whatever environment, whatever setting they're crossing. So, the things that you could find on these in this section could apply to traveling through the mountains versus traveling through the plains versus traveling through the desert. Yeah, they're very generic. The mechanics are specific, but the narrative is for the game master to embellish as they'd like.
Yeah, but that's where you can plug in the strange places stuff.
Exactly. Yeah,
You can
the
take-
two sections actually are really work well together if you want to. You can take the strange places to get you the flavor of the region you're going, and then use the events to kind of come up with the challenges that you have to face.
And he says also, does it vary by the purpose of the journey? And what inputs are for what sort of roles are played?
Let's say that one again.
The question is, do Sojourn roles? I think he's talking about the roles, like the hunter, the guide,
Okay.
things of that nature. Do those change depending on your purpose in your journey? Are you a posse in pursuit of a criminal or on a pilgrimage? Do those things change? I mean, in my head, I can imagine that the mechanics stay the same because it's still kind of a general. You have to have a guy who's the decision maker, the map, the guy with the map. You have to have a guy that's providing some kind of resource of victuals. So I imagine that we could call them a different thing. And
absolutely good.
It's a great idea for an expansion in a source book at some point, maybe when we.
It is, yeah.
Add some additional options in there, but I think probably that the roles stay more or less the same. It's just the flavor would change based on the game master's interpretation of what the Sojourn is about. So
sure, we've
got our idea of what the Sojourn is. We've got our idea about the roles. What's the next step?
Yeah, well, once the group's kind of figured out the roles. The roles are actually a part of the first step, which is called preparation. Determine who's going to be responsible for what. As a part of that, the game master also assigns the Sojourn a level of risk, and that risk level modifies roles that you'll make later on, depending on whether it's when you make your departure, when you make your chance of events, how difficult the events are, the obstacles are to overcome, are all based on what the GM decides the risk level is. So, like the lowest level, risk level 1, would be a fairly routine trip over civilized land. Not expecting much trouble, weather's fair, all that good stuff, all the way up to oppressive, which is like the top level, which is we're going to go through enemy territory in the middle of a winter, after having just broken out of prison, so we have like zero supplies and that sort of thing. It's like, okay, yeah, that's going to be really difficult to work your way through.
Bones
so
and
that's
Kirk
all part of
break out
the
of
preparation.
Bones and Kirk break out of Repente, and that's oppressive.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah,
you go from the Shire to Bree, and that's more like it's
no problem. We're going to cross. We're going to pass in front of Mordor in order to get to where we want to go. So yeah, that's going to be dangerous.
Okay, so now
a war zone or something.
We have our difficulty now. We have our roles set aside. So how does the difficulty impact? What does that change?
Well, the first thing it's going to do is on the next step, which is known as what's called the departure. So this is they've gathered their supplies and the group is ready to leave. The first role of it is the guide makes a roll to sort of plan the departure from wherever your point of origin is and set off. And they'll make a test, and you would count up the number of successes, and the more successes, the better. But the number of successes is reduced by the risk level. So that's the first point. So the more difficult the Sojourn is going to be, harder it is to get started off well. And if the roll is good, then things work out fortuitously for you, and you may get bonuses at the beginning of the Sojourn. If the roll comes out poorly, or the risk level drops it too low, you start off at a bit of a disadvantage. Maybe there aren't enough supplies. Maybe there's an enemy in pursuit. Something like that.
So Clark Griswold is packing his station wagon to go on a family trip.
Yeah,
that's a poor roll for preparation. That's like a really crappy roll.
That's terrible.
That's the Clark Griswold. Now Lewis and Clark setting out on an expedition. That's like a really good roll.
There you go.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right. So we've done that, and then what's the next step?
So the next step is determining events. I should point out that during all of this, the game master can decide for themselves whether they reveal how risky things are, or even reveal how poorly or well the results of the departure are. That can, narrate that as you will, depending on whether your group, your table is the one that likes the crunch or likes the narrative. So you go with as you will. But yeah, anyway, the next step is to determine events. And what we do is we break it down. If depending on how long the Sojourn should take, there could be a certain number of events. If you have a higher risk level, will increase that. You're more likely to run into complications as you're traveling. A more routine one diminishes it, so it's not as problematic. So then the game master can roll to see how many events show up, and then there's charts that you can roll on. You have strange encounters with people. You could run into obstacles or distractions, opportunities, hostile threats, and so forth. And then each of these subcharts has more mechanics attached to them.
So I imagine
to kind of detail the specific event and the mechanics involved.
I imagine that most game masters, at least game masters like myself, most of the time, like, I don't do really, really long trips. I do like a lot of short trips. So, I imagine that the way I would use this is I would say, okay, cool. You are traveling 3 days, but that's just like one event, right? And I can say, I can just pick like it's one event and cool, because then you can do your thing and then get back to the adventure. You can say, here's the cool thing that happens. But if you are on a long journey, like let's say you are narrating some kind of crazy pilgrimage to you are crossing the entire fields of light to Zahir, okay, and you're on a caravan, and this is going to take like a month. Then now that would be a great time to bust out and be like, yeah, here we go. All right, we got three events. Let's see what happens. And to me, like, I feel like it's a great tool because it scales.
Yes,
it can scale down to like we're gonna be gone a day. It can scale up to that month-long caravan, and that's what I think is cool about them. So yes, you can have several events or just one.
Exactly. Yep.
Typically, I think the upper level is like 3, isn't it? Is like that's the high end.
I think that is, yeah. I think the most you could probably end up with is maybe somewhere between 4 and 6, and that's for like a journey that may take you a full year.
Okay, yeah, a year. Wow, that's a hell of a trip. So fair enough.
One den of myth to the very next. So, but yeah, I'd say on average, 2 to 3 events. So
all right. So what are events? What kind of things happen?
Well, they range from being fairly tame social encounters, such as you could run into some of the local people, farmers, ranchers, huntsmen, that sort of thing, and have an opportunity to interact with them. Like for that example, you might make persuasion rolls or social rolls to, talk to them, learn about the land, and if you roll well, you get a bonus on your next event because you got some inside knowledge. Like, oh yeah, well, you might want to be careful about the river; it's flooded this time of year. Oh well, okay, now we're prepared. All the way to you run into said obstacle. the river's flooded and the bridge is out. How are we going to figure out a way to get across this? And
So it could be
a couple of rolls, and
it could be a small role playing encounter, or it could be basically a side quest.
Yeah.
And the game master, of course, can choose like what kind of level they want to do for an event. I like the one that's honestly one of my favorites is Natural Beauty.
Yes.
It's going to sound a little corny, but Michael and I, we live in Colorado, and Colorado's got some amazing natural beauty locations. We've got Garden of the Gods. We've got Garden of the Gods. We've got the Lookout Mountain, and just there's a ton of places. Estes Park. There's a ton of places you can go and just sort of see, kind of like those vistas in Lord of the Rings, and it's something I think can be part of that awe and wonder of playing in a fantasy game, when you can do that with dragons and volcanoes and the crazy ruined castles up on the hill, or a giant skeleton impaled by a giant sword on the side of a mountain, and you can be like, you see stuff you've never seen before. Here is a natural beauty, a stellar spectacle, if you will. And I think that's like the fun part for me, is just like, it's scenic overlook this way.
Yeah. And then the party takes a moment, and everybody kind of makes a roll to see how inspired they are by seeing this. I feel great for that was amazing. And I just feel, as you know, Ross, sometimes you can just take a look at one of these vistas in Colorado and like, man, I'm in a really good mood now. And there's mechanics to represent that. If you happen to choose that one, so.
You can also find like things that are unique to the world of myth. You can find a relic from one of the past ages, which could in fact be one of those magic items we talked about before. You can find a place that's been touched by the darkness, which is kind of a way to remind you that at the core of myth it's all about a conflict between the light and the darkness. You can find, an angry beast, or even a chase scene. I kind of dig that one as the side quest part. Like if I was going to throw a side quest at my players, it's like, you see a runaway wagon, and there's some guy racing after it, and he's like, "Stop those horses!"
So make a couple of skill checks and narrate what happens. And then that's just like this little point that when the Sojourn is over, then the heroes gather around the campfire and like, wow, you guys remember when we did that thing, or when we saw that thing, or when we barely escaped with our lives over there? One of the things I should mention, that none of these events are intended to stall the progression of your game. If they fail in the event, there's an obstacle, they have to cross the river, and everyone flubs their roll. It doesn't stop anything. It just makes the end result that you just arrive much more miserable. You have a chance of just ending the journey with like, oh man, that was so hard. Nothing went right, and that's fun story as well. But it's I really wanted to emphasize that the events are never meant to stall things. It's very much a fail forward idea. It just gives you something to talk about when you're finished.
Speaking of finishing, the next step is arriving at the destination, right?
The arrival, yes. So every time that you have one of these events, the results could affect the final arrival at your goal, and your risk factor, or how you began the journey, could also as well. So at the very end, there's one final roll, modified by things that may have happened during, in different events on the trip, and so forth. And the roll determines, what state you arrive in. Do you arrive in haggard, exhausted, hungry, supplies gone, and just, miserable from like, I'm never doing that again, to, we came, we conquered, we made it, we've success, and we are invigorated for the next leg of our journey and continue in our quest.
So this really is the arrival. The arrival kind of tells you what mechanical effects there are when you are now back in the rest of the adventure. Like you've taken your little trip from A to B. Now that you're at B, the thing in between. Now here's how that impacts you.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Like,
you know, if things have gone wrong, you know, left and right, then you arrive there and you're exhausted and hungry, and yeah, you know, maybe it's going to be a little tricky to kind of continue on the actual action of the story. Um, or on the other hand, you know, if everything went well, then yeah, you continue on, or maybe you're even at a bonus because you're just like, you know, all fired up because of, you know, your group's success and the friends you made along the way.
the real treasure. The real treasure was the
treasures.
friends. Yes. So, having written all this out, have you ever used this kind of thing in a game?
Not in this format, but yes, I have used it a little bit. I have done ideas where, you know, back in the day of random encounters, where it's like, okay, guys, let's just make a roll to see how well this trip goes for you. This has a lot more nuance to it than any of the slapdash stuff I've done in the past. But yeah, you know, make a roll, and you know, well, our scouting didn't go so well. Like, okay, well, I'm going to roll in this chart and see what complications you run into, and then you know, they may arrive at continuing their quest a little more tired than they expected to, or they might not.
Well, I can tell you for sure, like, you know, just talking to you and looking at this again, I realize that I missed that opportunity, and I don't want to do that again. I think the next time that I'm running a game and my players are going anywhere, and I feel like, hey, there could be something interesting here. I think I'm going to use this. I think I'm definitely going to lay this down and be like, hey guys, so yeah, this is not you know, you're going on a little trip, and let's talk about that. Yeah, a tour, a 3-hour tour. No, but seriously, I think this actually is the thing that is one of those great. This is the reason why I'm happy that it's in the game master section, because as a game master, I'm that kind of guy who enjoys finding something I can add into my game. I'm always looking for a way to elevate the experience, okay,
sure,
for the players, and there are things that are too mechanically involved to make it worth my time. Like, there's things that are just like, dear God, all you know, it's got 15 charts. Like my brain explodes. Okay. But something like this is simple enough, but it's deep enough that I feel like it adds a lot of value to me as a game master to do that, to elevate my game a little bit and say, yeah, next time you're going on a trip, I could do something cool with it. Is there a
go ahead. Yeah, the idea is you know, I didn't want to put too much heavy crunch into it. You know, this shouldn't take, you know, Sojourn is designed not to eat up your whole session for the night. You know, these events should be able to be, you know, cranked out, you know, 15 minutes or so, but you know, you could still have some fun, you know, going through the narrative of it all. But yeah, they're just like giving you the tools to create a little bit of a little addition to the narrative that you're trying to tell.
Okay, so we're almost out of time. I do want to ask you just a couple of quick questions. Do you have a favorite relic that you worked on?
Oh, favorite.
I mean, relic. Obviously, it's the Enhancer tools, right?
The Enhancer tools rank pretty high up there. If I had to say, it's probably a tie between those guys, the Enhancer tools, and the Wands of the Warcaster, which work better if they're in pairs. So it has that sort of gunslinger almost feel for your spellcaster.
I like the Bulwark Shield. It's basically a portable stone wall.
It is, yeah.
You're just carrying around like a stone wall.
There's some history to it too.
Yeah, well, they all have history. Like, each one of these things has a little bit of it's got a section on its history. It's got a section on what it's used for, and it's got a section on how it improves with your character, which I think are good. So we've talked about the magic items. We've talked about we've actually gone through all of Sojourns, and we've talked a lot about the strange places. Do you have a favorite strange place?
I would I would probably say it's probably the Symbio Woods, because it's very creepy, and you know, it has that spooky sense, and it also has that, you know, almost elder horror sense to it, this body horror thing to it. It's very scary and it has a very ick feel to it, and I love it.
Yeah, it's like David Cronenberg plus a scary fairy tale type forest.
There you go. Exactly.
You just smash them together. I'm like reading about one of the things you can find there is a squirrel that's watching you, and then you look closer and it's just an eyeball on a squirrel's body, and you're like,
Yeah.
Just, I mean,
have a moment of freak out.
Yeah, that would freak me out just a little bit. So I think that's great. That's great. Well, thanks for coming on with us tonight, Michael. I really appreciate you taking the time to kind of walk us through. All of these sections are written by Michael, so when you check out the Game Master's Guide for Myth, Tales of Legend, you can see all of the stuff that Michael's been working on, including Strange Places, Relics, and Sojourns. I'm really excited to try out the Sojourn stuff. For sure. Oh, we've got a comment in chat. Some great ideas. Thanks, Michael, from Eric FIH. So you have a fan.
Yeah. Glad to hear it. No, it was a pleasure to work on. It was a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
Cool. Yeah, absolutely. I'm really interested to see how my players react to something like your Sojourns and your Strange Places. Magic items, those are, that's always one of the challenges as game masters, like finding a way to get the right items into the hands of the players. Do you have any advice? Like, if you were going to tell a game master, like, these are cool relics, but how and when would you introduce them into the game? What would you say?
I would say look at look at the character's backstory, look at their history, look at their goals and their personality, and pull from that. If you have a warrior who was a member of the Bright Legion at some point, and had a mentor or something like that, have the mentor leave a clue to where this is, and then make it a quest sort of thing. Make it personal. Always make it personal.
That would be one of the backgrounds you can have as a player character is have a mentor.
Yep.
And we have like a whole section of subcharts that can help you figure out exactly who that mentor is. So yeah, that could be a lot of fun to have your sensei come and say, okay, yes, the time is ripe for you to find the Umbral Blade.
Yeah.
It is hidden here. Go prove yourself. Yeah.
Or heck, make it the opposite. You have an enemy, and the enemy has this. You need to get it back from him.
Even better. He stole it. He stole it from me. Yes.
He stole it from him. Yeah.
Yeah. Like
always make it personal to the character as best you can, because then it's valuable.
And as a GM, let me tell you, there's nothing to motivate somebody faster than stealing something of theirs. What?
He took what?
You can lead an entire group on a goose chase just by stealing one of their boots.
Absolutely.
I mean, I've done it, but
it's
all right. Hey, so want to thank Robert for setting up this great chat, and you guys make sure to check out Myth Tales of Legend, which is coming soon. But first, of course, is Myth Dawn of Heroes. So keep an eye out for that. But in the world of Myth, there will be Tales of Legend, and we are those who help players tell their tales of legend for their characters, and yeah, that's what this has been all about. So thanks very much, guys, and we will catch you later.
Thanks, Ross and Michael. Robert here. I just wanted to tell everybody tomorrow at 8 a.m., Greg Gordon, who is in the chat, VBG Greg in the chat there, will be running Torg Eternity, an Aurorsh actual play at 8 a.m. Pacific time. And then at 1 p.m., Greg is also running his Reign and Sin actual play game as well. And then Greg's also going to be on a Torg Eternity Pan-Pacifica panel at 7. So tomorrow is Greg Day, all Greg, all the time. So
he's a machine.
Yes. Machine. We will see you tomorrow at 8 a.m. For some Torg Eternity. Thanks, Ross, and thanks, Michael. Bye.
Appreciate it.